anybody ever heard of the book Wild at Heart? I'm wild at heart, but God can take wild and tame him for his good. And I'm probably going to cry most of this time because I don't know any other way to express to you how incredibly emotional it is for me to be able to share my journey of finding God, knowing God, and all that he has done in my life. I think that's the thing I want you to hear so much is it's a journey. It's not just one moment. It's not just at certain points in your life. It is literally an ongoing journey till we get to be with him in the end. And so my journey starts as a little girl, one of 6 kids. I was 5 in the line of 6, and all 8 of us piled into a station wagon every single Sunday. Mom and dad, 6 kids lined up in the pew of the Catholic church nearby. And, you know, I ended up rebelling the Catholic church as a teenager, and church in general. I didn't like CCD. I didn't like the fact that I raised my hand and asked. In here, the Bible says that I can pray directly to God, but you want me to pray to the priest. And I got sent to the principals, and I got sent home. I got punished at home. So I think my teenage rebellion started with CCD class. But I wasn't rebelling God. I was just rebelling rules in general. I didn't really like rules. I still don't, to be honest.
Amen.
I'm not a very good rule follower, never have been, maybe never will be. But something happened all along that where seeds were planted. Thank you to my mom and dad who planted seeds. Know that when you take your children to church, you're planting seeds. And those seeds were in me all through my years. And so I broke away. My dad would drop me off at CCD, and when he pulled away, I would run 2 miles to Mary Beth's house, who they were not religious and didn't go to church, and then run back in time for him to pick me up. It was bad, but I think that the first time I got to feel the raw pain of needing Jesus was 12 years old. My parents got divorced, and my mom left, and she was living in a different city, and I was rebellious then. I refused to leave my dad. I wanted to live with my dad, but my dad was at a very broken place at that time. And this was the first stepping into codependency at that moment. I started to iron his shirts for work. I scrubbed the kitchen floor that used to be all 8 of us participating in cleaning. I spent my Saturday mornings as a 12-year-old cleaning my dad's house. I got my period, and there was no one there. I walked blocks away to find Crystal's mom to ask her what am I to do, and I had 3 older sisters. But because of the chaos existing in this broken family, they were off running the streets. My sister ended up pregnant as a senior in high school. My oldest sister got hooked to drugs and alcohol, and my sister Mary, the oldest, died at 49 from the cancer that invaded her body. Thank goodness she had recovered for 12 years prior to that. She found the Lord in a very deep way, never missed AA, never missed church. She went to church every day to light a candle on behalf of people with addiction. So, you know, at 12, I started to pray to God, you know, for just help and you know, what was I to do? And then it started to grow as a 16-year-old. Anybody have a first love? Mine was, and you married yours, and you married yours. And my daughter's going to marry, my youngest is going to marry hers, but my first love was Mark Testa. We're friends to this day, but he broke up with me to go with my best friend, Tony. And I was crushed, and there was no one to talk to. And I found a journal. It was beat up, I don't know where it came from, on the shelves at our home, and I began to write prayers to God. I just cried out, "Dear Lord, look, you took this away. What are you doing in my life?" I was 16 years old. And do you know, the Holy Spirit even works in the heart of a 16-year-old, because I woke up the next day after journaling and I got the power to say, I have to leave my dad's home. I have to go live with my mom. I knew there would be more structure. I knew there would be a little bit better place for me. And I had to pick up and leave and move to North Royalton from Akron, Ohio, where I was walking into a school. I had nobody. I knew no one as an 11th grader. One of the hardest things God ever brought me to then. And you know, something Callie said yesterday, she said, Loretta intimidated me. And I had to talk to Scott about that this morning, because you're not the first person to tell me that. Scott told me today, he said, but God had to make you that way, because how would you be so big and so bright and become a leader that people would want to go to and be attracted by? That sometimes it takes a bigger, bolder personality, and that helped me a lot. So thank you for those words, and thank you for those words too, because it's always a reminder to humble myself. No matter what God does in my life, I want to be humble. I want people to know it's been Him at work in me, nothing that of my own it revealed any of this. So going to North Royalton was one of the best decisions I ever made. I'll never forget Diane Kozik. Anybody know Diane? You know Diane. And I met Sarah then. She was a senior, I was a junior coming into that school. And she ran up to me and she said, hey, are you new here? Oh my gosh, just one person being kind. Can we just be kind? If you have the Spirit, one of the fruits of the Spirit is kindness. Her kindness completely allowed me to end up having the bravery to try out for cheerleading. Those girlfriends are my doobie sisters. Sarah can testify, we have been connected for over 40 years. I see them once or twice a year. We're on group text messages, and they were all at my daughter's wedding. I don't remember really any of the friends before them. I mean, it was really a precious time. And so in Philippians 4:13, I began to cling to this. I can do all things through Him who strengthens me. Haven't we all heard that scripture?
Yes.
But boy, that became an absolute model for my life. I clung to that because the journey was just going to kind of get stronger. So here I am. All my girlfriends were going to go off to college. And I had known with the college fund, nobody telling me to go to college, but I wanted to do what they were doing. And so I applied for financial aid. I worked 2 and 3 jobs, and I went to college. I graduated with a lot of debt, and it took me till I was 30 to pay it off, but I will never regret going to Baldwin Walls College and having that experience. But during that time, God began to work on me even more. I had not been going to church, and so watch and pay attention to what God is doing in your life. I think sometimes we're missing the clues, and some of the clues are, who is He putting in your path? And He had me, I started rooming with a girl who smoked pot, and I couldn't stand the smell of it and all the rest that came with it. So I asked to be changed to a different room, and I ended up in Tammy's room. And Tammy was a preacher's kid. Tammy got up every morning and read her Bible. Tammy went to church at the campus every Sunday. It was a Methodist school, and her father was a Methodist minister. And she invited me to church. And I stepped into that church, and we were all on the altar, and Dr. Hank Knight, the pastor, was strumming a guitar. Everyone was singing and Kumbaya, and I wasn't, but they could have been. And I fell in love with church again, and I started to attend that church. And Dr. Hank Knight became my first step in healing from my past. He was a psychology professor, and he started to counsel me. He counseled me through all those years in college. Now, the counseling has never stopped. I might add, do you need help? You know, for me, I needed more emotional support because I didn't have it anywhere else. I had to seek it out. And so he was, I just will never forget him, just his encouragement, just listening to me, you know, just having someone to talk to. And so at that time, he started to direct me to spiritual disciplines. And he said, you daily have to be in the Word. You daily need to pray. You need to regularly affiliate yourself with other believers. Why are we doing this? We need each other. This is how we stay on point. This is how we stay focused. This is how we're going to journey together. That's why we worship at one time together. And so I just remember Romans 8:26. The Spirit helps us in our weakness. The Spirit intercedes. And so every time I felt weak, I turned to God. Every time. And I have 22 journals to prove it. It is hopefully the legacy I will leave my kids, because right now a raw place for me are my kids. They don't mind, not my son so much, but I've got a middle one giving me a whole lot of trouble as far as disrespect, not seeing me for who I am, it's difficult. But I will not be weak. because I have the Lord. I know where my strength comes from on a daily basis. Well, and I get married. I have my first son at 24. Now kids are still living at home at 24. It's like it's a different world. And I remember the gift of a baby. Who remembers their first child? The gift of holding that baby. And all I wanted to be was an awesome mom. I wanted to be an awesome mom. And I started to evaluate, what did that mean? To me, it meant raising them with morals, raising them with values, raising them to know Jesus the way that I was getting to know him. And this is a highlight of my life. I raised my kids in a church. I ended up finding a non-denominational church. It was biblically based, and I worshiped there with my family for 14 years. Christ Church. There, I brought 3 other people to be saved. And to me, that was just, I know that's why I was brought to that church. One of them is a mutual friend of all of ours, Dee Yesback, and I'll tell you about her in a minute. So, for me, that was the most important thing. And one day my kids will get to read their journals, my journals, and they will know how much I prayed for them. I prayed for their souls. People, pray for your children's souls. Pray for their future spouses. All 3 of my kids have chosen beautifully, unlike me. You're going to get to that part of my story. Hold on. But it's because I prayed. And also at 15 and 14, Kristen and Kaylee, together with their hands held, were submerged and baptized. My son in his youth group at 15, submerged and baptized. They are all believers. And then, if I only did that with my life, I'm good. And so what happened to me with a church family, if you don't have one, why is that important? I'm going to tell you, they're the ones that will be there when the struggle hits. And the struggles do hit. In my church family, this is where I got to learn to serve unconditionally. Just give yourself away. I ran the marketing ministry. I just began to pour myself into being in small groups. Oh my gosh, who's in a small group? Small groups to me, I can't really be without them. I am without them right now. It's I got to do something about that because I think it's a void that I'm feeling. I began to give and tithe and give faithfully, no matter how bad things were. There would always be money to give, and just encourage you with that. And this was the beginning of really the turmoil in my first marriage. He didn't go to church with us. I don't know if anyone else has walked that journey. You haul up, you get 3 children ready by yourself, you go to church anyhow, but your spouse isn't with you. It's hard. You're hearing this, you're growing, you want them to grow. My first husband had an addiction to pornography, and it was so painful as a woman because I felt like a blow-up doll. Excuse me, but it's just the truth. I didn't feel like a woman. I felt so low. And it was terrible. If anyone has ever walked that journey, to have someone want to look at someone else, so painful. Prayed that through. He had a binge drinking problem, and the worst part is he was emotionally abusive. Now I figured out a narcissist. That's it. I remember when that started to come out, and I looked up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, he meets every single criteria. But what he did was he called me names. He belittled me. He even used the MFing word to me. And there were times, I can remember several times hiding underneath the bed. I didn't want to experience that anymore. But here I was in this strong walk with the Lord, praying for this marriage. People laying hands on me, praying for this marriage. I didn't want to leave. I kept hoping, I kept praying, I kept believing that God would redeem this. And he did. He did, because he had an affair. And my pastor and his wife pulled me into their office and they said, "You are leaving. You will divorce. God just gave you permission. It is time for you to get out of this." Went back to counseling and found out that I was being held hostage emotionally. And I remember the first night I had to sell a beautiful home that we had built. I moved to this house that I had a bucket under the kitchen sink. I had straps around the fence in the back. It was falling apart around me, but the peace I felt, Cindy, peace. I laid in that bed that night. I felt peace. And he used to always say, "You're such an angry woman." Do you know what? I don't think I've ever experienced anger like that ever again. Anyone ever push your buttons till you get angry?
Yeah.
That's what was happening in this toxic relationship. So I'm so grateful for that time. And I recall Joshua 1:9. Don't be afraid and don't panic, for I, the Lord your God, am with you in all that I am with you in all that you do. And this just became my rock. And so just a little side note, my church family, they moved me. My church family took turns bringing meals. My church family, one girl, Rachel, came over every single morning on her way to work to pray with me in the morning for about 6 weeks. Because I was crippled. I could have curled up in a corner. It was crippling, but I couldn't. I had to move on. I had 3 beautiful kids. If you would ask anyone that was in my life at that time, they didn't even know I was struggling. Because I had the Lord. I had peers and friends that lifted me up. We kept going forward. And just continue to believe that my life would get better. And so then for me, the hardest calling God has ever brought me to. The hardest. And to this day, I totally related with Callie. I had to be the provider. It's all out of God's whack. It's not in line with God for me to have had to been the provider. And within a year after that divorce, a sole provider. I still don't know how I stood sometimes because that was so hard. There was never enough money. I don't even know what I would have done without the fact that my sister Terry, her husband had become very successful, and Terry bridged the financial gap in my life. God, I don't know what I would have done without her. She bought my kids their school shoes. She paid school fees. She would come over and just load the refrigerator with groceries. It was just such a time as that. And I was working full time, but nothing felt like enough. And so for me, also the shame. There were people in the community, my kids were not allowed to play with their kids because I was, or they weren't allowed to play at my house because I was divorced. I was so ashamed because this community was filled with what looked like happy, perfect people. And so I clung to Psalm 139. God knows our heart better than we do. I kept saying, okay, their opinion of me is not what matters. God's opinion of me matters. And I knew he loved me. I knew he saw good in me. And I just continued to cling to that. And then Choose Plus became my financial gap builder. I don't know what I would have done. I got introduced, you guys know that part of my story, from a $500 check to within a year, a $1,200 check a month, to really just the beginning to be able to breathe, pay my own bills, not need my sister to buy groceries. What a day that was. And in 2 Corinthians 9:8, and God is able to bless you abundantly, so that in all things, at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. My needs were always taken care of. My kids never went without what they needed, not so much what they wanted, but I'm glad for that now. Too many kids have too many things they want. So God sent me another man into my life, and I had some red flags, but he was a kind, spirited person. And I was such a strong walk with the Lord. He was not staying at our house. He never spent the night at our home. And I broke it off with him, thinking this might not be right. But he showed up at church one Sunday, and he got saved and started showing up at church and sitting next to me and the kids, or just me because the kids were at church, every Sunday. And so I thought God, and he did. God put him in my life at that time, and we got married. And he didn't drink at all. But within 3 months, I figured out that he had a severe depression problem that I didn't know. I knew he had like a quiet side, a withdrawn side, but I thought he was just kind of introverted and shy sometimes. No, full-blown depression. Didn't work for 6 weeks at one point. No paycheck coming in. Now, basically, he never worked more than enough to pay for his own self. So I was still providing, by the way. That never changed. But, and then 5 years into the marriage, he began to drink. And it became full-blown bipolar disorder. And he ended up 10 years in. We moved to Wilmington, and Daphne and Wayne have walked this with me. I don't know what I would do without them. They know what I walked through. They saw it. They never turned their back on me. They never were ashamed of me for what I was going through. Wayne would call me. He would document. he helped me. They both helped. They bought my flights to the next conference. Thank you both so much for loving me. It means so much to me. And Brian walked into the bank and took most of my money out of the bank from my Juice Plus paycheck. And he got in the car and left. I have never seen him again. My kids have never seen him again. It was tragic at the time. Mainly for my kids. It was like, once again, I was like, oh boy, what now, Lord? Why this? But I'm going to tell you, I don't have regrets for Brian. Number one is he came to know the Lord, right? Number two, he was a really good stepdad. He was kind to my kids. He showed up at every single thing they were in. He drove to it all. Every concert that lasted 3 hours, he was there. Every football game where Kristen was playing the trombone, he was there. God sent him there so I could get the kids raised. But it wasn't it. God wasn't done working in my life. And so, to me, I was living in a home, and I ended up donating everything in my house. I gave it away. Matter of fact, you all know Ashley. Ashley was going through a very painful divorce with an extreme abuser, and he came in and took all of her furniture out. She had 2 children. I had a moving truck stop by, get all my furniture, move it into her house. God is working in strange ways sometimes, but he's working. I was able to give to her, and my friend let me rent her beautiful 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom condo at the beach. Jan was there. Canal view, ocean view, beautiful. And God had me there so I could heal at the ocean. And I remember playing my worship songs, and it was a 2-mile walk down and back with my dog Angel. Does everyone remember Angel, beautiful white dog? Angel, for a reason, because she was my angel, and literally every day just started the day out hour of power, an hour of begging the Lord to do something good with this. What is this all about in my life? And so at the time, in my journals, all I wrote was, I have broken wings. 2 now. I felt so humiliated. Being divorced twice, being a Christian, please have mercy and empathy and forgiveness for those around you that walk through tough times but are still believers. Sometimes it's what God's doing, and it's not in our control. It's how he's working. And so I needed to forgive myself first because I was a disaster. All I felt like was this. And then this scripture hit me. Isaiah 40:31. Anyone know it? But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. And I ended up getting a new computer at the time, and when I opened it up, the screensaver were eagles. I went hiking with my son and his wife in Frederick, Maryland, and we saw a flock of eagles. I've never seen eagles with my own eyes in my life, and we saw many eagles. And I started to say, Dear Lord, I have eagle wings. You are going to let me soar. You are going to let me fly. My life is not over. And I began to have a whole different perspective. And to me, it was affirmations. I began to affirm my life, every area of my life. And this was the first time in my life I had no financial struggles because I was only taking care of myself. My kids were raised, only one in college who was on a full ride. He was redeeming my finances. I was able to pay all my bills. I didn't have anybody pulling me down, taking from me. I was able to stand up. I was able to completely redeem my finances, got 100% debt-free, not one debt. It was unbelievable for me. Just such a time. And then I began to pray. I was never going to get married again. I just said, it's okay, Lord, you want to use me for other things. I'm not meant to be woven. This must not be for me. But I was lonely, guys. I'm a people person. I'm a connector. I felt a lonely heart. And as God would have it, a fellow national marketing director calls me up and said, are you dating? And I said, no, I'm looking at this Match.com thing and I'm horrified. I said, no, I said, I'm hoping maybe someone at church. And she said, well, there's this guy, he lost his wife to cancer and he's moving on Carolina Beach. He's super sweet. If nothing else, you guys should be friends. That night we got connected. And I know people love at first sight, but for us, I don't know. There was an absolute connection like I had never felt with another human being. Our first date, he drove around the canal 2 minutes to pick me up. I could have walked over there, but he came to pick me up, climbed the 3 flights of steps to open the door. And we went on a boat ride. And he looked at me. It was a line, I know it. He said, it's so hard to look at you. You're so beautiful. Do you know I never had a man tell me I was beautiful? Not before Scott.
You are.
And
You're
for
beautiful.
the first time, I have been given someone who actually really sees me. He sees me for who I am, for what I am. He celebrates my weaknesses. Matter of fact, he covers over them all the time. I cover over his, I hope. And it is, I don't think we've been in a fight in 4.5 years. Like the compatibility, being evenly yoked, having someone who's kind, who's equally generous. Oh my goodness, Scott, I love you so much. I thank God for you every single day. You have redeemed relationships for me, God, with Scott. And so, for me, I want to just sum up what I've learned. I've learned first, you must trust God. You must trust His plan in your life. You must receive His strength. People will say to me, you're such a strong person. I am not strong. I have a strong God.
Amen.
He's strong, and therefore I am, because He lives within me. Perseverance. We're running the race. I'm still walking through tough times. Scott and I now are called to caregive for his mom with Alzheimer's. My middle child is rejecting me. I mean, if you think the struggle ever ends, it doesn't. But it's okay, because I'm going to have perseverance to the end. Love. Everything kind of comes down to love. It's why I couldn't live in fear during the pandemic. 0. And most of you shared that with me, thank you. 0 fear, because I believe that God already has a plan on my life, has a plan for my soul. I trust it, and also that much instilled fear is of the evil one. There is no way that is from the Lord. I wasn't going to receive that amount of evil, negative, fear, driven, crazy. No way. Turned off the news, stuck with the team. This team, we stuck together like glue. We didn't stop. We kept seeing each other. We kept Zoom with each other. We prayed with each other. We just got stronger. We got better. All right, that's a whole nother experience. And also, really, what I hope, and here's my hope for my future. I just want to be a servant. I just want to serve others. I want to serve our team. I want to serve my husband. I want to serve his parents, as hard as that is for me. I want to serve God by serving others. And so servant leadership is really what I hope I can offer the world going forward. And just finding joy in the hardship. No matter how hard the day is, I always seem to come back to joy. If you have the fruits of the Spirit, what are they? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such thing there is no law. Thank you so much.